Hi there, my name's Don. Welcome to Project Urtle. In this episode we're going to cover the design and material selection for the camper van that I'm building on my Ford Ranger ute. Now back in episode 1 we set the basic parameters and I'll go over those quickly again now. First of all, I had to be able to make it myself, by definition, because of budget constraints. I couldn't afford to buy one. So that probably means that I'm going to have to call on my own skills, but also skills of my friends, neighbourhoods, relatives, etc. as we go. The second criteria was that it had to fit on my Ford Ranger ute. It's a single cab chassis, 4x4 diesel 2010 model Ford Ranger. You might say, what's a ute? Well, it's a small truck. Not a truck in the terms of some of you of the American persuasion might view a truck. In my estimate, that would require a building permit to be able to park it on the side of the road. I don't want something that big. I haven't got something that big. It had to sleep 2 people, have a shower, a toilet, a kitchen, a dinette, and be able to do all of those things whilst being inside out of the weather. It had to generally fit within the profile of my vehicle. That is, no wider, no longer. And in doing so, that would allow it to retain a large portion at least of its off-road capability. Now, when I say off-road capability, I mean off-formed roads, off normal bitumen, off normal gravelled roads, graded roads, and into what I would call a track. I'm not the kind of hairy-chested four-wheel drive enthusiast that requires a four-wheel drive vehicle that can climb vertical cliffs or ford deep rivers using only a periscope for navigation. All I want to be able to do is to travel around a largely flat continent and do so in relative safety with little risk. My initial design started out with something that looked like this. Well, maybe not quite like that, but that was sort of the impression. In fact, this is Urtle. This is my logo. And will one day, if I feel like it, end up living on the back of the finished product. But let me show you where I really started from. Okay, this I didn't draw all of it myself. It's drawn in a package called Sketchup, which is available free and is a really useful entry-level 3D computer-aided design process. I suppose I had a little bit of a head start in that in my working years I used to use AutoCAD software for design of process systems, production lines, factories, that kind of thing. So I suppose I really had a head start. But in a retirement situation, a free bit of software does everything I need to do, and SketchUp, I think, is really one of the better ones. The aim of the first few drawings was to explore size and layout. If I couldn't build everything I wanted to have on the truck, it wasn't worth going any further. So I explored widths, lengths, heights, various layouts internally, until I came up with something that was probably 80 to 90% acceptable. And I could then start to refine that from that point onwards. In doing that, you quickly find that you need to make a lot of compromises. There just isn't infinite space, and those compromises push against each other. They compete for what is available, what space is available, and it takes quite a while of iterative going around and around in circles, finding a way to make everything fit with the least amount of compromise. The flow on from having at least a preliminary feel for size and layout is that I could start to generate a component list. And to do that, I developed a spreadsheet. It's just my way of taking notes. My pencil and paper techniques are lousy by comparison to what I can do with a spreadsheet. So what I did there was put together a spreadsheet, and it lists pretty much everything. Having created my list of components, I used the Universal Procurement Manager's price list, eBay, and I found an approximate price and approximate weight for every one of those components. The resulting data said that I was going to be up for around about $20,000 worth of materials cost, and the finished camper would probably weigh about 550 kilograms. So that at least notionally was within the load capacity of the truck. And at this point I think we need to start to talk about load, because the financial side of it was bearable. But we really needed to focus on load. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to refer to some notes here, because I really can't remember these numbers off the top of my head. But the gross vehicle mass of my vehicle is listed on my government registration paperwork as being 2,957 kilograms. And it has a listed tear weight on that same document of 2,080 kilograms. By subtracting one from the other, this gives me a figure of about 877 kilograms that I can safely and legally use as the upper weight limit for my camper design. But wait, it's not that simple. In fact, it's quite a bit confusing, especially when the vehicle's owner manual states that the gross vehicle mass is actually 3,044 kilograms, which is more than what the government says it is. But when it comes to being weight checked on the side of the road, I guess the government wins. So I'm going to use the lower GVM value. Now the tear weight, that's a bit harder. It's unlikely to be the same as the factory data, and it does not take into account fuel and passenger load. Now, what I weigh, I can estimate reasonably accurately. What my wife weighs with her handbag, I can only roughly estimate, and even that at my peril. And I know my ute has an aftermarket long-range fuel tank added to it, which increases its tear weight when fully fueled up. So I'm really coming to the conclusion that my tear weight is somewhere around about 2,400 kilos, which really only leaves me about 550 kilos for the camper van build. Now, I know it'd be a good idea to take my truck down to a weighbridge and weigh it and find out what the real tear weight is. But at the time I started this project, the vehicle, as you saw in the earlier episode, had a big steel service body on the back of it. And when I take that service body off the back of it, the vehicle is not going to be in a legal state to drive until I build a fair bit of the camper back on. So it wasn't really practical to take the vehicle and get it weighed properly. So as you can see, the estimate of the load capacity of my vehicle in order to put a camper body on the back says that I've got to be able to do it inside of about 550 kilograms, including all of its bits and bobs inside of it. And my initial estimates, as you probably can see from the spreadsheet, was that the camper body was estimated to weigh about 550 kilograms. And almost by definition, probably something to do with Murphy's Law, estimates are always underestimates. So throughout this project, I'm going to have to be very, very careful to monitor and manage weight as we go. After about the third round of design, the design started to look a lot like this. And although it's difficult to see on this, I'll show you a better shot of this full screen. You can see that it now has a pop-top roof, which helps keep the profile of the camper lower while we're travelling and gives us full standing height when we're stopped. It has a overhead bed over the cab. That bed runs the bed north-south, that is from the front to the back of the vehicle rather than side to side, and it is designed to fold up when the bed isn't in use and be retained totally inside of the space over the cab, because in the area immediately behind the cab is where the dinette is. You can probably also see really the area behind the cab is taken up with what I call a through boot or a trunk, a place where I can store heavy items. One of the things that I've tried to ensure throughout is that heavy loads are carried forward of the back axle. I don't want any heavy items hanging out behind the back axle. And I'll show you a picture that I picked up which shows why. The dinette will not be accessible when the bed is folded out, so the bed covers over the space of the dinette. The rear door is sunk below floor level on the outside with a first step on the inside that allows me to step up and into the camper without a great deal of contortion. Immediately in front of the entry door is the shower toilet cubicle, and to the left and right of the door is going to be some cupboards that provide storage and kitchen space. Now the body is going to sit on a chassis that looks something like this. The chassis will be built out of aluminium or aluminum if you like. The basic construction will be a ladder frame running down parallel and above the truck's chassis and sat as low as I can possibly get it. Then attached in each of the four corners of the chassis are four bins. The two forward ones will be accessible with hatches from the outside of the vehicle and be there predominantly for tools, recovery equipment, those kind of things. The two at the back, the one at the back on the passenger side is actually the step at the entrance door, and the bin at the back on the driver's side is a built-in grey water holding tank. All of that will be welded constructed framework out of aluminium, 3mm thick, and most of it out of angle sections that are 50mm by 50mm. Now the body will be made of fiberglass foam sandwich material, and I'm going to have that material laminated and pre-cut for me by a company in Brisbane called Styromax. And Styromax are very, very accommodating to DIY builders. A lot of their business comes from DIY builders, and you can get a kit from them of component parts, samples of component parts, and so I can show you what the wall material will look like. This is their foam sandwich panel, and you can see how windows, doors, etc. can be cut out of it, and if I turn it around like this, you can see how it is a layer of fiberglass, a layer of high density foam, followed by another layer of fiberglass. So my exterior wall and my interior wall are completely finished, nice glossy cleanable things. It's insulated from heat and cold, and it's extremely rigid. There is absolutely no flex in that sample piece. Obviously there's going to be a little bit over a large area of piece, but in a sample piece it's really, really strong. And this will be bonded together using an adhesive, and only an adhesive. It'll be glued to the chassis, the walls will be glued to each other, and there's a few aluminium extrusions that go to help with things like the pop top. Okay, that explains the material selection and the method of construction for the chassis and for the body. Now I need to talk about what I've chosen to build the interior cabinetry. The cabinetry could potentially become quite heavy. I want it to look like a professionally built RV inside, and so what I've chosen to use there is a material called Urtle. It's manufactured in New Zealand but available in Australia, and it looks like this. Looks just like a melamine coated board, which would normally in a kitchen situation be made from MDF or particle board with a melamine surface on it. But in this instance, you can see that it's made from a foam sandwich. It's melamine, 3mm ply, foam, ply, melamine. And so it gives me the look and finish of a professionally built cupboard inside the RV at a fraction of the weight. It's really, really light, but again, very rigid. It's solid stuff. It comes with a range of mouldings, edge mouldings, mouldings for joining one to another, mouldings for doing nice rounded corners, all sorts of things. It's a well-developed, mature system designed specifically for RVs. And so I'll be using that inside. So that about wraps up all I need to say about the design, how I got to that design, what materials I'm going to use. And now we can start the real process. I should add probably now that the body has been ordered. As soon as I completed the design of the chassis and knew what I was going to build the body onto, I was able to place an order for the walls and roof and some of the interior panels from Styromax, and their lead times are significant, probably in the 12 to 18 weeks time frame. And so that has been on order now for about almost 12 weeks. And in the meantime, I've been building the chassis and some other components, and the next episodes will cover doing that. Thanks for watching. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see further videos. Cheers.